Hello and welcome to this session. I did say when Lisa booked it that this room was too big, and I was right. But welcome to this session with Joanna Lumley. When Lisa Campbell and Phil Edgar Jones asked us to do this, it was because Joanna, with me, are doing a tour around Britain later in the autumn, and I thought this will be great. It'll be the final dress rehearsal for the tour. But that's not quite the case. If we were comedians, which we're not, we're very much a work in progress session. So it's going to be me interviewing Joanna primarily about her career in television and what we can learn from her, she's primarily been obviously in front of the camera, but she has also worked as a producer and a director. So we're going to try and glean from her what we can learn that might be useful for the Edinburgh TV Festival. I first started working with Joanna almost 30 years ago. I was an AP with Ruby Wax, and we did this little sketch where the idea was that Ruby was trying to get ratings, so she was doing Through the Keyhole but without permission. So she smashed the window, she went in, and we dressed a house, and Joanna was so brilliant in it and so funny playing herself that we had 300 letters of complaints that how dare we break into Joanna Lumley's house, which I, as the AP, had to reply to all of them. And then so we carried on working together, and we did other sketches with the Ruby Wax, and obviously Joanna has had a phenomenal career. She's one of the few people who's been a kind of hit in drama, comedy and non-scripted. Please welcome to the stage Joanna Lumley.
God, it's extraordinary seeing those again. You know, I only saw it sideways on from the back, but I can just remember that cringe-making feeling. I became hysterical when I had the Purdy wig on and was having to do those things in the car park, rolling over the bonnets of cars and doing all the things that in the Avengers I used to be able to do. And of course now, after a major nervous breakdown and having to be rehabilitated, completely impossible. And Ruby and I were just crying with laughter. And whenever we two are together, sometimes with Clive, we look those things up and we put them on and we just sit there and we do nothing but laugh. It's pathetic, isn't it, really? This is what'll happen when you're old and you retire.
Well, yeah, so we might talk about Ruby in a bit later, but I thought we'd start with drama, because that's loosely where you started in terms of television, in terms of your career. You'd had a few appearances on Steptoe & Son and Are You Being Served, and
On the buses,
all the greats. And then you landed the role of Elaine Perkins in Coronation Street.
Yeah.
Now, Elaine, as many people here will know, was briefly Ken Barlow's girlfriend. So I did some research about Elaine Perkins, and this is what it comes up. Elaine Perkins, despite several proposals, she had remained unattached, considering herself not ready for marriage. When she met Ken, she was seeing a liberal politician and enjoyed the occasional jaunt overseas. Over the following weeks, Elaine and Ken went on several dates as friends. They found each other stimulating company. This is old days for Coronation Street. Debating such topics as censorship and snobbery in the art world. Ken began falling for Elaine and tried to interest her in going to the countryside with him. However, she had a prior engagement and turned him down. Ken grew jealous of other men in Elaine's life. Later, she revealed that she had arranged to go to Brussels with her friend Timothy. Ken asked her whether Timothy was a friend or a lover and confessed that he was in love with her himself. Elaine tried to reject Ken gently, but when he called her permissive with other men, she spurned him more firmly, labelling him a stiff provincial twit. And that was the end of your career in Coronation Street.
It's a complete mystery. That whole thing is a complete mystery, because all I remember was that I said, can I go to the Rover's Return? And they said, no, you're too posh. So I said, well, what do I do? And they said, you stay at home and you drink sherry, because that's a posher drink. And when Ken comes around to show you're brainy, you can be picking apart a transistor radio and putting it together again. And that's all I remember, except that I had to say when Ken said, will you marry me? And I said, no, because I don't want to stay in Coronation Street. And I said, please don't make me say that. Please, I want to do this job. I really want a long-term part in this lovely show. And they said, no, you're just in for 8 episodes. If you remember, Ken Barlow's wife had just had a tragic end. She'd electrocuted herself on a hairdryer. Do you remember that? And Ken was a bit in rags, and he'd fallen for the headmaster's daughter, Elaine. Oh, it was great. Many years later, Clive, the clock whizzes forward, 35 years, I don't know. They said, will you come back into Coronation Street and break Ken's heart again? I went, you bet. And I couldn't because I was doing, I think, one of Clive's shows, and so I couldn't come back. And I think the part went to somebody like Rula Lenska.
Stephanie Beecham.
Stephanie Beecham.
What
they used to be friends.
What were soaps viewed like in 1973 as a budding young actress? Were they something you aspired to? I mean, nowadays ITV depend on Coronation Street.
Oh, and chic people. I mean, once Ian McKellen went into Coronation Street, there was no stopping everybody. Everybody then just tore off. It was as if they just sort of suddenly went, I am Batman, and they just went, I want to be on Coronation Street. I want to be in EastEnders. But Corrie was the one that caught them. But in the old days, all I wanted was a job that went on for more than one episode of On the Buses, you know, which I was paid 60 quid for. And I thought if I could just get myself into something which had a kind of constant character, I could begin to be known, and then people might want me there and I could stay there. But I was only in it for 8 episodes. That was when there were 2 episodes a week. And coming up to Manchester and going to the green room of Coronation Street, and being there when an Australian tour had come to the end of its huge journey around the world. They'd been to the pyramids, they'd been down the Rift Valley, they'd seen the Grand Canyon, they'd been up the Empire State Building. And the highlight of the tour was to come to Coronation Street. And many of them were crying, just crying to find themselves in that iconic place. And, you know, to see Ina Sharp with Vi Carson walking past, you go, hello, and they'd go, oh my God, as if they'd seen the Virgin Mary. It was pretty thrilling stuff. It was pretty thrilling, and it was a big bump when I came back from that. I couldn't get arrested.
Did it pay well in those days?
No, nothing paid well for people like me in those days. I mean, 70, 80 quid a show was about what you got.
Because you were a single mum in those days, you must have been desperate to stay, and didn't you try and bribe the producers, the writers?
You do everything you can, but the truth is, if your name isn't on the card, it isn't going to be there. You don't know how to get a job that lasts. I was Harry H. Corbett's girlfriend in Steptoe and Son. On the buses, I can't remember what I did, but I was somebody's girlfriend. And in something else, Up the Workers, you tell me what it was. I was always somebody's girlfriend, sitting there dressed usually quite nicely, in your colour scheme. Pale blue and a bit of beige, and looking quite nice, and speaking with this voice, always with this voice. And I'd say, I can't do another voice. And they go, we don't want that silly voice. And I'd go, I can do it in French. They say, we don't want that voice. You've just got to speak in this ghastly voice, which rather trims it down. So I would sit there going, how lovely, how lovely.
And then it was 2 or 3 years later, the new Avengers came about, and you must have known that it was on the cards. How did the whole audition process come?
Everybody in the world. For a start, Britain didn't want to do the new Avengers again. They said, it finished. Not with Di Rigg, funnily enough, but who came after her was Linda Thorson, who was a lovely Canadian actress, who was only 19 when she got the part. By this time, Patrick was maybe 45, coming up to 50, and it was an uneasy gap. But Linda was very shapely. I'm sure many of you can remember her. Very shapely. And by shapely, I always mean bosomy. I always mean huge bosoms. Linda had bosoms. And so when Britain said, oh, we don't want to do the show again, Canal Plus in France said, but we will take this show up because we love the pulchritudinous of the girl. And they thought they were getting Linda. And they got me with my cut hair and then, in those days, rather a thin, flat chest. And they were really disappointed. But it was financed by the French, which was the reason why, because we had those embargoes against taking anything to South Africa at the time. France didn't. So we went down to South Africa on a trip, the 3 Avengers, Patrick, Gareth and me, and the country closed down. We had motorbike outriders, we had whole floors of hotels and constant bodyguards. Parliament stopped sitting the night we were on. I mean, it was massive. And it was just the first breath of what stardom could be. The first and only breath. I just thought I'd slip that in. It never happened again.
Were you conscious that it was, because it was Canadian money and French money and a little bit of British money, and does that affect the actors and actresses, or do you not care? The money comes and...
The money for the show, it sort of comes. I seem to remember, this might be something you don't say to Television Festival, and it shouldn't really be broadcast, but I think we ran out of money owing Pinewood, plenty. So then we were sold to the French. And then the French ran out of money and sold us to the Canadians. By the time we got to Canada, only 3 of the Avengers went, Gareth, Patrick and me, nobody else. And the Canadians had a completely different view of it. They liked killing with real knives and punching people to pulp and kicking their faces. And we said, oh, in the Avengers, we don't do that. And they said, well, we do it over here in Canada like that. Bam! And so we were in a slightly different show. And when Gareth and I discovered we were being paid less than the assistant wardrobe master, we were a bit cheesed off.
And was it equal pay? Were you and Gareth and
No, Patrick, quite rightly.
Patrick was a bit grander, but obviously.
Patrick was the Avengers. You couldn't do the Avengers without Patrick Macnee. And the funny thing was, he thought he acted Steed. Those of us who knew him knew that he actually was Steed. He could ride, he was courteous, he refused to use, like Steed, he refused to use a gun because having been in the war, he couldn't bear anything like that. He was immensely amusing. His nickname was Bits because he was always cutting bits out of newspapers and pushing them under the dressing room. Darling, I thought you'd be interested in this. Little notes coming out of the doors about anything under the sun. He was, of course, paid more than we were, and I think he was rolled into part of the action. But Gareth and I were on a buyout fee. It's all changed now, sweet young children, as I look out at you. But when, at my age, we were back in those days, whatever you did seemed to be a buyout fee for jolly little. So for 600, I think it was £6,000 for 13 whole episodes in the first year, worldwide buyout for all time. Not a lot of money, no repeats. And the next year it shot upwards to £8,000 for the whole year. So £14,000 got you 26 episodes, hour long.
And how long would it take to film those 26 episodes?
It always took, we started a new episode every 2 weeks. They said, we can accomplish these in 2 weeks. Not one episode ended in under 3 weeks. So we'd start another one, but we'd have the tail end of the one before. And on one call sheet day, it looked down, and I had Purdy in 5 different episodes, the scenes I was doing that day, 5 different episodes. So I had, cleverly, thought up this hairstyle, which never changed, and just 2 gold stud earrings. So no matter, rather like one of those dolls you dress up with tabs on its shoulders, stick stuff on me and I'm still the same, still roughly the same, doing stuff, not doing stuff, reacting to stuff. Get out of the car, run, just run. You go, where? What am I running from? Just run. I did love that show. I loved it. I was on first call every morning for 2 years. I did all my own stunts. Well, I couldn't ride a motorbike, and they said, we can teach you in a lunch hour. What's the problem? A big motorbike. Ride it round the yard. The yard was as big as this square here. Ride round, and then you can do motorbike stunts. So I was a bit of a chicken, and I got a man called Colin, who was a stunt man, quite slight. He had to wear a wig and show his hairy legs. And he was Purdy on the motorbike.
And so it was syndicated, it went everywhere. It was on CBS, it was on CTV in Canada, it was on ITV, it was on RTE in Ireland, TFI, France and Spain. It was all over the world, but you, not for your benefit, just for your global fame.
Yeah, but you know, you all know this, because we're in the business. There's nothing like being known for something. It almost doesn't matter if people like you or not, if they know you. As an actress, the difficulty is of saying, well, I was in a thing, somebody just goes, yeah, well, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that, didn't see that. And you keep going, well, I was in Hedda Gabler, I did this, I was at the, well, I didn't see that, didn't see that. If they can see you in something. Now, in the Avengers, after I'd done Dracula films, I'd done Coronation Street, I'd done all kinds of things, nothing had stuck. And suddenly, Purdy in the Avengers stuck. And so I wouldn't have cared now whether I'd done it for nothing, for what it gave me, which was an identity. An identity. Incidentally, I must just tell you, when I got the part, she was to be called Charlie. And those of you who might remember in those days, there was a scent called Charlie. Charlie, girl walking along, swinging her bag like this. American girl, long floppy hair. And I said, I can't be called Charlie. Also, Charlie's Angels was coming up. They said, what name would you like? And I said, Purdy, the name of the finest shotgun. Bap. And I said, also my hair, which was when I got the part, was down to about here and brown. I said, her hair will be different, it will be cut short. And they said, no, you cannot do that because no heroine has ever had short hair. True. And I said, I will cut it. And they said, you will not. I said, if I cut it, you'll like it. And they said, if you cut it and we don't like it, you've got to pay for a wig yourself. So I cut it and they liked it.